Alright, Arrow fans, time to take a look at the final episode of the day, which is What We Leave Behind. Artemis visits Prometheus and gives him the addresses of Oliver's known associates. Artemis reveals to Prometheus she needs to be there when he slaughters Oliver, though Prometheus says he's merely going to make Oliver wish that he were dead. Thea plans a Christmas celebration for Oliver and the remainder of the city staff. Oliver inquires as to whether she's recuperated for the Dominators' psychic games, before Susan Williams strolls in as Oliver's date. Felicity's likewise at the gathering with her beau, Billy Malone. She shakily acquaints Billy with Curtis and his husband. Felicity at that point makes an awful show of covering for Curtis's late evenings as Mr. Terrific. In the meantime, Rory and Renee are spending time with Diggle and John Jr. at the Arrow Cave for their own holiday festivities. Artemis shows some presents to the remainder of the group, custom stockings, which delights everyone. Additionally, Renee implies that he has a child. It gets interrupted before Diggle can start asking questions. After Oliver gives a speech at the gathering, both Susan and Felicity congratulate him. Felicity makes it awkward for everyone by bringing up the idea of a double date. Curtis follows Paul out of the party, says Paul caught him in a lie about how he spends his nights. As Curtis attempts to come clean with Paul, Prometheus appears and personally assaults Curtis. Prometheus leaves Curtis bloody and unconscious while Paul calls for help. Curtis awakens the medical clinic with Paul close by. Paul asks how Curtis knows how to fight well enough to stave off the Throwing Star Killer, but Felicity and Oliver show up before Curtis can say anything. When Paul leaves the room to speak to Detective Malone, Curtis says that Prometheus must realize that he's Mr. Terrific, which implies that Prometheus knows the rest of the group's secret identities. Outside the hospital room, Billy demands that Felicity stay with him until he gets Prometheus. Oliver reveals that the Throwing Star Killer had injected Curtis with Declozerol, a TB drug, a drug that appears in an old SCPD case. It turns out the medication was attached to a pharmaceutical organization proprietor named Justin Claiborne, who was on Robert Queen's list. Oliver killed Claiborne so as to prevent him from price gouging TB medication 4 years ago. Felicity briefs the group about Prometheus' connection to Claiborne, so they research one of his old warehouses. Prometheus drives Green Arrow into an abandoned office and begins to fight him. Prometheus gets the advantage. However, Wild Dog shoots Prometheus' blade out of his hand. Artemis reveals her hand and attacks Wild Dog. Artemis argues that the city should be spared from Oliver and chooses a flashbang to cover their departure. Team Arrow meet up at the Arrow Cave while Diggle sends their friends and family to an Argus safe house. Discover a few remains at the distribution center. Felicity has Renee and Rory start a DNA test. Felicity then meets with Billy, who was one step behind Green Arrow in their investigation. Although Felicity begs him to stay off the case, Billy will abandon his duty as a cop and walks out. Rory calls Curtis to tell him about Evelyn's betrayal, just as Paul walks into the hospital room with supper. Chris then tells Paul that he works with Green Arrow. However, Paul's reaction is less than ideal. He says that Chris has to choose between being a vigilante or being his husband. Felicity discovers that the remains belong to Justin Claiborne himself, which makes it impossible for him to be the killer. In a flashback to Oliver's initial assault on Claiborne, he threatens him with a blowtorch to stop the price gouging. He leaves him with an arrow in the leg as a warning. Billy heads to the Claiborne distribution center and finds a lockbox containing a child's picture. He sends a photograph of the image to Felicity, long before Prometheus discovers him and attacks him. Back at the Arrow Cave, Felicity attempts to make sense of the connection between the infant picture and Prometheus. In a flashback, we get somewhat more foundation on Claiborne. He made weaponized TB to gouge costs and make requirement for his TB sedate. Oliver plans to kill him. However, Diggle cautions Oliver that there will be outcomes to his actions one day. Andrew discloses to Oliver that Prometheus kidnapped Billy and pursues Oliver to put a shoot-to-kill request on Prometheus. Felicity discovers that Claiborne had a child, which persuades that Prometheus is Claiborne's child. Besides, Oliver says that Prometheus knows quite certain moves, which persuades that Prometheus followed Oliver's preparations so as to get ready for vengeance. The gets ready so as to assist Oliver with discovering Billy. Thea reminds Oliver that there's different sides to each heritage, 2 variants of what we leave behind. Curtis appears at the Arrow Cave to assist Felicity with discovering Billy. We at that point see a flashback when Felicity helped Oliver track down Claiborne's mystery bootleg market gathering. Oliver across the location to the underground market gathering and understands that this place Prometheus as Billy. Oliver finds a body in Claiborne's mystery office in the specific situation of where he dropped a portion of Claiborne's bodyguards. Oliver follows the path of bodies, all in a similar position as bodyguards Oliver murdered 4 years prior. He confronted Prometheus in the exact spot where Claiborne was killed. Prometheus saw the Green Arrow had even hesitated when killing Claiborne, or if his father was merely another name on the list. Green Arrow tried to goad his opponent, saying he was there if he wanted revenge. Prometheus replied that his crusade was so much more than simple revenge. They began to battle. After they collide with the lower floor, Prometheus assures Oliver that he's examined him and will take everything from him piece by piece. Oliver sees Prometheus somewhere off to the side and shoots him multiple times in the chest. Oliver discovers that it was a ruse, and it was just gagged Billy wearing Prometheus' suit. As Oliver processes what he's done, Prometheus tells Oliver that everyone he comes into contact with dies. Oliver returns to the Arrow Cave and goes to Felicity that he incidentally murdered Billy. He explains the situation to the group, and Felicity says this was Prometheus' fault. Oliver tells the group they ought to get as distant from him as we expect under circumstances. Regardless, Dick remains close to him and says they are exactly where they're supposed to be. Curtis comes home to discover Paul packing his stuff and headed to his brother's. Paul says that he wouldn't like to drag Curtis away from his new life. However, he additionally wouldn't like to stay to watch Curtis bite the dust. Lila calls Diggle and requests that he get to the sheltered house, as something isn't right with JJ. At the point when he gets to safe house, a group of FBI agents are there to arrest Diggle. Oliver appears to Susan's condo and says he didn't have the foggiest idea of whether place to go. Oliver admits to Susan that he ruins individuals' lives. Susan says Oliver just focuses on the negative and begins to kiss him. The following morning, Oliver strolls into the Arrow Cave and finds none other than Laurel. Dun dun dun. So let's take a look at some trivia from this episode. Oliver mentions Die Hard as one of his favorite Christmas movies. Though he also happens to be Stephen Amell's favorite Christmas movie in real life, which he mentioned that the script was an ad-lib, and also got to fill in the blank. Oliver also mentioned that in his second favorite Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life. Oliver also mentioned his second favorite Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life, claiming to have seen it last week. This is a tongue-in-cheek reference to the previous week's episode, Invasion, which premise was similar to It's a Wonderful Life. This episode marks the first full appearance of the Hood since Broken Dolls. This is the first episode to feature flashbacks that take place during Season 1 instead of the flashback storyline. When Curtis is talking to the team about Evelyn's betrayal, he mentions the 1984 horror movie adaptation Children of the Corn. Oliver and Tommy were mentioned to have been trying to impress Russian tennis player Maria Sharapova. The flashbacks in this episode take place with neither Damage and Trust But Verify, since Diggle is a member of Team Arrow. So questions why Oliver still firmly believes in the list. I believe that the conversation about how Oliver found his father's message hasn't happened yet. It is confirmed that the flashbacks take place before betrayal, since Felicity is not a member of the team yet. Katie Cassidy was credited in the end credits, so her appearance in the episode wouldn't be spoiled. Felicity breaks the fourth wall in this episode when she says, "In our town, people who are dead turn out to be secretly alive almost every Wednesday." For its first 5 seasons, no episodes of Arrow aired on Wednesday nights. This is also foreshadowing to the cliffhanger ending of seemingly very much alive Laurel Lance. Evelyn portraying Team Arrow is reminiscent of the New 52, which depicted Evelyn joining the Birds of Prey, but later betraying the team to Mr. Freeze. This is the 5th Christmas-themed episode of Arrow. The title referenced the line from Thea's conversation with Oliver about the types of legacies he leaves behind. So this is a pretty interesting episode, and yeah, I'm just kind of curious as to which version of Laurel showed up, so yeah. So overall, I give What We Leave Behind 4 arrowheads out of 5. When you tune tomorrow as we do the next episode, Who Are You? So, until then, in the words of Oliver Queen, you have failed this city.